Willy Lindh, has been called everything from a traitor to a savior. As one of the first UN soldiers to arrive in Cyprus in 1964, he would witness the beginning of the war that 10 years later would split the island apart. Ever since Cyprus gained independence from Britain in 1960, the island has been tormented by constitutional wrangling, hate crime, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. The constitution, which was created to ensure power sharing between the Greek and Turkish Cypriots, was suddenly questioned and amended by President Makarios, causing tensions to rise. The violence, murders, and feuds would escalate, forcing the United Nations to step in and protect the civilians.
I was met by the commander of our battalion, it's about 900 soldiers, and he said, "My congratulations to you. You are coming to the worst part of the island. The most complicated part." And where is that? Well, it's Erenköy area, Dilirga, where there is a conflict going on between the Greek and the Turkish Cypriots.
The year before, President Makarios had proposed a controversial amendment to the constitution that would repeal the power-sharing arrangements between the two communities, a liquidation plan which was later known as the Akritis Plan. Suddenly, Turkish Cypriots found themselves unarmed and defenseless against the Greek Cypriot militia that dreamed of Enosis, a union with their motherland Greece. Turkish Cypriot police were disarmed, their communities encircled, and even their politicians were forced out of office. All power over airports, power plants, and water supply were given to the Greek Cypriot government, who, through the amendment, hoped to extradite the Turkish Cypriots from Cyprus. With reports flooding in of ethnic cleansing and attempts of genocide, this is when the UN chose to intervene. Willy and the others were tasked with setting up outposts and preventing an escalation of conflict. They were not allowed to interfere, but were required to report any military action from either side.
I was stationed in the Dilirga area, which is Erenköy and 4 other villages, 4 Turkish villages, and 1 Greek village in the area. And we were surrounded by Greek Cypriot and Greek troops, heavily armed. They had artillery, they had tank weapons of different kinds, they had mortars, and they were outnumbering the Turkish side. Well, it very soon made me think that we are not neutral, we are not peacekeeping. We are taking side. And in some cases, I think we took the wrong side. I was not the only one who reacted to this. Even the officers and probably soldiers as well on the battalion that preceded our battalion, they came there in April, May, June of '64. They got the same impression. So just a few days after I arrived, I was approached by a Swedish officer whose name I'm not going to mention. He said, "Well, I promised to bring some spare parts for tractors to a village, Santa Maria or something it was called. It was a Greek name. I promised to bring it to them, but I didn't have time. And tomorrow I'm leaving, going back to Sweden. It's the end of my mission here. do you think you could transport this tractor parts? So I said, yes, of course we can do something. And before we left, I said, I will have a look about these tractor parts. I suspected there was something else. And I opened the box and found there were 5 machine guns in it. So I decided to bring it there, of course, to the little village that was undefended. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no heavy weapons, almost nothing, just a few rifles shooting birds and things like that, which is not very much about to use against armored troops. So I brought it there. That was my first mission, 3-4 days after I came to Cyprus. So actually I took side very early, because we understood, as well as they who had been there before, that the way the UN is treating the Turkish Cypriots is not the right way. So then I became the ruler of the Erenköy area with our 5 villages with Turkish Cypriots, and I visited them, and I visited also some of the Greek villages around it, and got my opinion about the situation. My idea about my impression of the United Nations activities and way of treating is that they sided definitely with the majority, with the Greek side. They looked upon the Greek side as the rulers of the island and the Turkish Cypriots as troublemakers. Also, we got the impression from the Greek side that Turkey is interested in taking over. It's close to Turkey. It's 1.5 hours boat ride from the Turkish south coast to this island. And they look upon it as a partly Turkish island. So that was the impression we got from the beginning. And that was the UN idea that we have to defend the Greek side against aggression.
Do you feel that still continues today? Do you feel the UN still has that viewpoint?
Yes. Unfortunately, otherwise they should have solved the problem long ago. We were supposed to be peacekeeping. And when peace suddenly disappeared, or had an end, the UN didn't succeed in keeping the peace at all. We were 9,000 UN soldiers on the island, and we could have in some cases taken part or tried to stop fighting and so on, but we didn't. As a very grave example is that a couple of months later, in August, when the Greek Cypriot side attacked Erenköy area, there were troops from Greece. We don't know the exact number, but something between 15 and 10 or 15 to 20,000. Educated Greek regular NATO troops. And there were some 10 or 12,000 Greek Cypriot National Guard, which have not a very good, but some kind of education. On the Turkish side, there were just a few thousand Turkish Cypriots, most of them without any kind of education. There were a few officers, Turkish officers, who were trying to make this some kind of military force without much success, actually. But there was an extreme difference in power on both sides, between the two sides. And UN did not do anything. What did they do when the Greeks finally attacked the Erenköy area, which they did with troops from all sides, attacked the 5 Turkish villages? We got the orders to withdraw. Get out of here, this is dangerous. Of course it's dangerous, war is always dangerous. But we were supposed to stop the war instead of going out and leave it to the Greek side.
What are
your thoughts of Mr. Willy Lindh? Can we talk about this gentleman?
Oh, Willy, what a hero Willy is. Willy he is Swedish. He was with the United Nations. He was a commander in United Nations, and he was based in North Cyprus. It was before the intervention. He was based here, and he was put to a place in the extreme west of the island. A little sort of, it's almost an inlet, really. And it's surrounded by mountains. And he was put there to sort of buffer what was going on, except that he discovered that weapons were coming in to the Greek army, who was just the other side of the hill, and they had instructions to cleanse all the Turkish villages around Erenköy. He didn't think this was very fair, so he tried to stop it. And for his intervention, he was arrested, sent back to Sweden, put in prison for 8 months, etc., etc. He's back in North Cyprus now. Unfortunately, not enough people understood that this man was working for humanity. He did not think it was fair that the Greeks were supplied with weapons, but not the Turks. These were villagers with sticks and old rifles, and these were people with full-blown weapons. It didn't happen. They were not wiped out. Long story, but they were not wiped out. They survived, but it is now just an army base, but it is still Turkish. But he, to me, is an absolute hero for standing up for what he believed to be humanitarian.
But for the rest, UN didn't do anything. Seriously. They just tried to be in between, so to say. Enjoy the place. During my time, we didn't have any guests coming. No one was going to the beaches or going for a holiday in the island like they do today or were doing after 1964.
I don't think it's too impolite to say chocolate soldiers. They race around in North Cyprus in their trucks and their jeeps and everything else as though they own the place, but they don't recognize us. They have bases, big bases in the buffer zone, fine, and they have bases in the south of Cyprus. Why are they here? I mean, every day above our village at 1:45, a helicopter flies along the border, turns round and flies back again. What are they looking for? Naughty sheep or something? I don't know why this has to happen. We haven't, thank God, had an uprising in the island since 1970. So what are you looking for? So I don't know why they're here. You try and talk to them. We had somebody who met with somebody in the United Nations, and she said to them, "Why are you here?" And they said, "You have to understand we are here to buffer between the Turks and the Greeks."
I don't believe they need to be here, or if they are here, we should say you are only allowed on the north side if you recognise us. If they say we cannot recognise you because the government is the Republic of Cyprus and they don't recognise you, we can't. Well, sorry, you're not allowed on our side. Simple as that. You cannot come across our border till you recognise us. We can't recognise you until you recognise us.
Most of my soldiers, and most of the other soldiers here in the UN, did what they were ordered to do and had to do, even though the UN didn't act properly. They should have tried really to stop the Greek attacks and Greek Cypriot attacks. And there were Greek Cypriot troops, mainly Greek Cypriots, and they were shooting into the village without really knowing what was in there. Maybe they saw someone, they were shooting, and when they passed the village later, there were some people dead or wounded on the streets. So it happened, definitely. When a Greek Cypriot military unit attacked one of the villages in the area, the defenders, the Turkish Cypriots, were just maybe 100. No soldiers, only men and boys, young boys, armed with, some of them with shotguns, some of them with the machine pistols, but none of them with any heavy weapons. The Greeks opened fire with mortars and machine guns, and some of the Turks retired, went back, but we stopped the fighting, and they could go back to their positions on both sides. That was the first time they attacked that village. So a few months later, Greeks and Greek Cypriots attacked the whole area, and they were outnumbering the defenders. My company commander, company is about 400 or 500 men, something like that. He called me up to the village and said, bring some of the soldiers up here. We are going to do something about it because the Greeks are attacking. So we went there, and he said, here is a map. I have prepared, we had heavy mortars, 120 millimeter mortars, which are quite important weapons, very heavy weapons. They can shoot about 8-9 kilometers. And they were down on the seaside close to. He said, I have prepared for opening fire with the mortars on my order in front of the Greek Cypriots, the Greeks' lines. There was a big field, so they had to cross the field one way or another. On the other side of the field were the Turkish Cypriots and the village. So he said, if the Greeks are passing this line, we will order the mortars to open fire, and that will stop them. And bring them this map, because this map shows where we are going to shoot. Take it to the other side, to the Greek side, give it to the commander, and inform him about what's going on. This is our first possibility of really stopping the fighting. I was just going to leave when the commander of our battalion, the Swedish battalion, the colonel, came over. And he said, what is going to happen? What's going on? Well, said my company commander, we are going to prepare for opening fire with mortars. And here, this lieutenant is going to the Greek side and show them the map, where it is. I was just going to leave, so it was just a few minutes too early. And they said, no, it's impossible. We can't do this against the Greeks. And my company commander got very upset, and he said, we have to do something. This is our first chance to stop them, to take over, to really take power, show our power here. And the battalion commander, Swedish battalion commander, the colonel, said, no, never. We'll never do anything like this. This is against, we are peacekeepers. We are not going to kill people, no. And so on. So I was never sent over to the Greek side. And some hour later, they attacked. Stopped, some of them were killed by the defenders, but in an hour or two, the defenders started to leave the area and go back closer into the Erinköy area. That was happened. That was one of the examples I had, how the UN avoided taking the chance to stop the attack, to really act in a proper way.
Well, I know you've touched on it already, but yeah, Willy is our hero, and I feel he hasn't been praised enough by, I mean, really, he saved the lives of hundreds of people with these weapons that he helped provide for the Turkish Cypriots. And some of them were going through relatives of mine that helped bring some of the weapons in, etc. But what I'm want to say is, thank God he was around and saw the humanity side of it. And after all, the United Nations, he said, are here for peace, not for one-sided. We're supposed to be neutral. We don't take the side of the Greek side or the Turkish side. We are supposed to be neutral, but to allow shiploads of weapons from Greece arriving and giving them heavy weapons and not allowing any weapons to the Turkish Cypriot side is allowing murders to take place. So he made it a slight bit fairer And some of the stories that he says the United Nations should have done a lot more, and they could have prevented some of the massacres that happened. But they claimed they didn't want to get involved, but they claimed if it was a Turkish Cypriot blockade, etc., they had the right to smash through it. If it was a Greek Cypriot blockade, they had to stay and answer to the Greeks. Now that isn't neutral, and that's one-sided. And I just wish they were a lot more equal.
What would you like to say to our TCE audience? Please feel free to speak to them.
Well, TCE audience, well done for joining the group, and please support us in every way you can. We have many ideas, and we're trying to encourage this man here not to wipe himself out, but have a core group to help him to fight the battle. I have my restrictions, but will help any way I can. And it was a pleasure to meet you and meet your group. And please, get in touch with all your friends and encourage them, cousins, etc., whoever, and speak to your MPs if you know them, or just if you don't know them, just go to their open days that they have in your area and promote us and put our point across. Ucken's got loads of, archive documents in the CCE, and you can read up on it and to arm yourselves with what to actually say before you actually go and meet up with important people.